2 interns can do your job for half the cost. Those words hit me like a freight train on that gray Tuesday morning in Chicago. I'm Martin Kane, 59 years old, and I had just heard the most insulting sentence of my career. Cassandra Holt, the new VP at Titan Industrial Supplies, sat across from me in her glass office, tapping her manicured nails on a folder marked Personnel Review. 18 years. That's how long I had spent turning Titan from a small regional supplier into the industrial powerhouse of the Midwest. I built this company's reputation one handshake at a time, one late-night delivery at a time, one problem solved at a time. I understand you want to cut costs, I said, keeping my voice steady. But experience brings results that fresh talent can't match. Cassandra barely looked up from her laptop screen. The numbers don't lie, Martin. 2 MBA interns cost half your salary and bring modern approaches to client management. Dylan Brooks and Emily Zhao will handle your portfolio. I felt ice form in my stomach. Not anger, recognition. I'd seen this play before at other companies. New management comes in, cuts the highest paid employees, celebrates the quarterly savings, then watches everything crumble when decades of knowledge walks out the door. When do you need my transition plan? I asked. Friday. 3 days to document everything for Dylan and Emily. Everything. 18 years of relationship building, market intelligence, competitor analysis, and client psychology. All the small details that made the difference between closing million-dollar deals and losing them to competitors. The personal touches that kept major clients loyal through economic downturns and industry changes. Cassandra was asking me to gift wrap my entire career for 2 kids who probably still had their business school textbooks sitting on their desks. The thought made my jaw clench. I'll have it ready, I said, standing up slowly. Walking back to my office, I noticed heads turning away, conversations stopping mid-sentence. Word travels fast in a company this size. Everyone knew what had just happened, even if they pretended not to. My assistant, Laura, looked up with sympathetic eyes as I approached my desk. Mr. Kane, I'm so sorry. This is completely unfair. Business is business, Laura, I replied. But could you pull the complete client contact database for me? Full history, not just the basic information. She nodded slowly, understanding finally sinking in. I made assumptions about what drove client loyalty without really understanding the relationships you had built. The relationships were never about me personally, I explained. They were about trust, reliability, and understanding each client's unique challenges. Those qualities don't transfer automatically to new people, regardless of their credentials. Cassandra looked around the networking event, observing the conversations and connections happening throughout the room. This entire industry runs on personal relationships, doesn't it? Most industries do. Business school teaches process and theory, but real success comes from understanding people and solving their problems. Our conversation ended with a handshake and mutual professional respect, but both of us knew that her strategic errors at Titan had permanently altered both of our careers, mine for the better, hers for the worse. The next morning, Dylan Brooks and Emily Zhao showed up at my office door, notebooks in hand and eager expressions on their faces. Both looked barely 30, with that confident glow that comes from graduating top of your MBA class. Mr. Kane, Dylan said, extending his hand, we're excited to learn from your experience. Emily nodded enthusiastically. We've reviewed your client files, but we need to understand your relationship management strategies. I spent the morning walking them through account histories, competitive positioning, and client psychology. Dylan took notes on his tablet while Emily scribbled in a leather notebook. Both asked smart questions about pricing models and contract negotiations. They seemed capable enough on paper, but I could see what they missed. When I mentioned Jorge Alvarez at Steel Core, I told them about his daughter's wedding last year and how he always made decisions based on family values. They nodded politely and moved on. They didn't understand that Jorge's loyalty came from remembering those personal details, not from our competitive pricing. When I explained Diane Mercer's situation at Lakefront Energy, how she was under pressure from her board to cut costs, Emily asked about our discount structure. She missed the point entirely. Diane needed a partner who understood her challenges, not someone pushing standardized packages. By lunch, I realized Dylan and Emily were good at business theory, but clueless about business relationships. That afternoon, Cassandra stopped by my office to check on the knowledge transfer process. "How are Dylan and Emily doing?" she asked, leaning against my doorframe. "They're quick learners. They'll figure it out." Cassandra smiled. "I know this transition is difficult, Martin, but change is necessary for growth. Your approach worked for its time, but we need scalable processes that don't depend on individual relationships." Scalable processes, individual relationships. She talked about business like it was a software program, not a network of human connections built over years of trust and delivered promises. "Cassandra," I said carefully, "these clients have been with Titan for years because of personal trust. That trust doesn't transfer automatically with a handoff meeting." "That's exactly the problem," she replied, crossing her arms. "We can't build a sustainable business model around personality-dependent relationships. Dylan and Emily will develop systematic approaches that any qualified sales professional can execute." After she left, I realized Cassandra wasn't just cutting costs. She was deliberately dismantling the competitive advantages that made Titan successful. In her mind, relationship-based selling was inefficient and outdated. She was about to learn how quickly those inefficient relationships could become competitive weapons in the right hands. I opened my laptop and started typing my transition documents. But I also started a separate file, a detailed analysis of Titan's operational weaknesses, pricing vulnerabilities, and strategic blind spots. Information that would be extremely valuable to the right competitor. By Thursday, I had prepared exactly what Cassandra requested. A complete transition file with client contact information, account histories, competitive landscapes, and relationship management strategies. Everything Dylan and Emily would need to take over my accounts. But I had also prepared something else. A comprehensive analysis of Titan's market position, including every weakness I had observed over 18 years, every client frustration I had heard in coffee meetings, every competitor advantage I had identified. Laura helped me compile the files, understanding without being told what I was really doing. "Mr. Kane," she said quietly, "some of these clients have been asking about your situation. Jorge Alvarez called 3 times yesterday. Diane Mercer wants to schedule a meeting with you specifically." I looked at the stack of documents on my desk. Client preferences, competitor vulnerabilities, market timing insights. 18 years of competitive intelligence that Cassandra had just made portable. "What should I tell them?" Laura asked. "Tell them I'm officially unemployed as of Friday," I replied, "but that I'll be available to discuss their needs very soon." My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number, but the message made me smile. "Martin, heard some interesting news about Titan. Would you be interested in discussing opportunities?" Victor Lang, Colossus Supply. Word traveled fast in our industry. Competitor intelligence networks worked both ways. I texted back, "I might be available for the right opportunity." My final day at Titan started with awkward goodbyes and forced smiles. Colleagues who had worked with me for years suddenly found reasons to avoid the break room when I walked in. Corporate politics prevented honest conversations, but everyone knew what was really happening. At 10 a.m., Dylan and Emily sat in my office for our final handoff meeting. I walked them through the transition documents, highlighting key client preferences and competitive threats. "One thing you need to understand," I told them, "is that these relationships aren't just about products and prices. Jorge Alvarez at Steel Core has been buying from us for 12 years because we saved his plant during an emergency shutdown. Diane Mercer at Lakefront Energy stays loyal because we restructured our pricing to help her meet board pressure. These details matter more than your MBA case studies." Dylan nodded confidently. "We understand the importance of relationship building, Mr. Kane, but we also bring fresh perspectives and systematic approaches." I could see in their eyes that they didn't really understand. To them, relationship building meant quarterly business reviews and annual golf tournaments. They had no concept of the invisible threads that connected trust, reliability, and long-term partnership. At noon, I cleaned out my desk. 18 years of awards, client appreciation letters, and industry recognition certificates went into cardboard boxes. Cassandra watched from her office window as I loaded everything into my truck. My phone buzzed. "Looking forward to our breakfast tomorrow. 7 a.m., Miller's Diner on State Street. Victor." Tomorrow morning, I would sit down with Colossus Supply's CEO and discuss exactly how much Titan's institutional knowledge was worth on the open market. Victor Lang was already waiting when I arrived at Miller's Diner the next morning. He looked exactly like what he was, a seasoned executive who understood that competitive advantages came from strategic thinking, not cost-cutting. "Martin, thanks for meeting with me," he said, standing to shake my hand. "Coffee." We ordered breakfast and got straight to business. "I've been watching Titan's growth over the past decade," Victor said. "Your market penetration in Illinois and Wisconsin has been impressive. We've struggled to compete in territories where you have established relationships." "Relationships take time to build," I agreed. "But they can shift quickly when circumstances change." Victor leaned forward. "I'm curious about those changing circumstances." Over the next hour, I explained Cassandra's strategic vision, her belief that relationship-based selling was outdated, her confidence that systematic processes could replace institutional knowledge, her assumption that clients would remain loyal to Titan regardless of who managed their accounts. "Interesting," Victor said. "So she's betting that your clients will continue doing business with Titan even without the relationships that originally attracted them." "That's her assumption. What's your assessment of that strategy?" I pulled out a folder containing market analysis I had compiled over the years. 40% of our major clients have expressed frustration with Titan's recent service changes. Another 30% have mentioned receiving competitive bids from other suppliers. The relationships I built were often the only thing keeping them from switching. Victor studied the documents carefully. This was detailed competitor intelligence, 18 years of market observation, all legally gathered through industry networking and direct client conversations. "Martin," Victor said, looking up from the files, "I'm going to make you an offer. Senior Director of Strategic Development at Colossus Supply. 25% salary increase, full benefits, and a mandate to expand our market share in the Midwest using your industry expertise." The offer was generous, but I needed to understand the full scope. What exactly would strategic development involve? Leading our competitive response to Titan's strategic changes. Using your knowledge of their operational weaknesses and client relationships to position Colossus as the preferred alternative when those relationships inevitably deteriorate. This was exactly what Cassandra should have anticipated. When you fire someone with deep competitive intelligence, you don't just lose their knowledge. You risk that knowledge being used against you. "Victor, I need to be clear about something. I won't violate any confidentiality agreements or use proprietary information. Everything I know came from legitimate industry experience and client relationships that I built personally." "I understand completely," Victor replied. "We're not asking you to steal trade secrets. We're asking you to compete using the market knowledge and professional relationships you've developed over your career." The distinction was important. I wasn't going to Colossus as a corporate spy. I was going as an experienced sales professional who understood market dynamics that Cassandra had chosen to ignore. "When would you need an answer?" "Take the weekend to think it over." "But Martin, I'll be honest, Titan just made the kind of strategic error that creates market opportunities." I spent the weekend thinking about Victor's offer and the broader implications. Cassandra believed that cutting costs would improve Titan's competitive position. She was about to discover that in relationship-driven industries, competitive position depends more on trust and expertise than efficiency and scalable processes. The decision was easier than I expected. Titan had made it clear that 18 years of loyalty and results meant nothing compared to quarterly cost savings. They had chosen to treat institutional knowledge as disposable. Monday morning, I called Victor at 8 a.m. "Victor, I accept your offer. When do you want me to start?" "How about today? We can announce your appointment immediately and begin planning our market expansion strategy." Colossus moved fast. By noon, press releases had gone out announcing my hiring as Senior Director of Strategic Development. By 2 p.m., industry trade publications were running stories about Titan's veteran sales director joining their biggest competitor. By 4 p.m., my phone started ringing. "Martin, this is Jorge Alvarez at Steelcore. I just heard you left Titan. What happened?" Jorge was one of my oldest clients, a plant manager who had trusted me through 3 facility expansions and 2 ownership changes. "Corporate restructuring, Jorge. New management wanted to go in a different direction." "Who's handling our account now?" "Dylan Brooks. Good kid, fresh out of business school. He'll take good care of you." But I could hear the concern in Jorge's voice. Our relationship went back 12 years. He knew my work ethic, my reliability, my understanding of his operational challenges. Dylan Brooks was a stranger with credentials, but no history. "Martin, if you don't mind me asking, Where did you land? Colossus Supply. Senior Director of Strategic Development. Long pause. Colossus is Titan's biggest competitor. They were. Now they're my employer. The announcement created immediate ripples throughout the industry. Trade publications ran headlines like Titan's top sales veteran joins rival and market shakeup as Colossus hires Titan director. Industry forums buzzed with speculation about client defections and competitive implications. More importantly, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Client after client called to express surprise at my departure and concern about their future relationship with Titan. Diane Mercer from Lakefront Energy called Tuesday morning. Martin, I can't believe Titan let you go. You've been our main contact for 8 years. New management, new priorities. I replied diplomatically. Dylan Brooks called yesterday about our quarterly review. Nice enough kid, but he couldn't answer basic questions about our expansion timeline. He kept referring to standardized service packages instead of understanding our specific needs. Frank Costello from Midwest Manufacturing called Wednesday. Martin, what's this I hear about you joining Colossus? It's true, Frank. They offered me an opportunity to continue serving clients in this industry. Good for you. To be honest, Emily Zhao called about our contract renewal, and I wasn't impressed. She seemed more interested in pushing their new efficiency protocols than understanding why we've been happy with our current arrangement. By the end of the week, I had received calls from 15 major clients, all expressing varying degrees of concern about Titan's new direction and interest in maintaining our working relationship regardless of company affiliations. I didn't encourage anyone to switch suppliers. I didn't need to. Relationships in industrial sales are built on trust, reliability, and personal connection. The first major client conversion happened 3 weeks after I joined Colossus. Jorge Alvarez from Steel Core called me directly on a Friday afternoon. Martin, we need to talk. Dylan Brooks just cost us a week of production. What happened? We had an equipment failure that required emergency replacement parts. Dylan said he could get them by Monday, but he didn't understand that our backup supplier in Milwaukee stocks those components. You would have had those parts delivered by Saturday morning. Jorge's frustration was obvious. I called Dylan at 6 p.m. to check on the emergency order. He said he'd call me back Monday morning because he was done for the day. You used to answer your phone at midnight when we had problems. This was exactly what I had expected. Dylan understood the process, but he didn't understand urgency. He followed standard procedures instead of solving problems. Jorge, I'm sorry that happened. At Colossus, we handle emergency situations differently. That's what I want to hear. Martin, I'm switching our account to Colossus. This relationship is too important to risk on inexperienced management. Steel Core represented a $3.2 million annual account. Jorge's decision would definitely get Cassandra's attention. Jorge, are you sure? This is a big change. I'm sure. Our operations depend on reliability, not corporate efficiency programs. I trust you, not Titan's new direction. Monday morning, Jorge's purchasing department sent contract termination notice to Titan and requested proposals from Colossus Supply. The industry grapevine started buzzing immediately. By Tuesday, Diane Mercer called with similar concerns about Emily Zhao's handling of her account. Martin, I need someone who understands that our board meetings aren't standardized processes. Emily keeps sending me generic pricing sheets instead of customized solutions. The client defections accelerated faster than I had anticipated. Within 6 weeks of joining Colossus, we had converted 4 major accounts from Titan, representing over $8 million in annual revenue. But the defections weren't happening because I was actively recruiting Titan's clients. They were happening because Dylan and Emily couldn't replicate the personal attention and industry expertise that these relationships required. Frank Costello at Midwest Manufacturing was the perfect example. He called Emily about expanding his order for the spring construction season. Instead of understanding his timeline and budget pressures, Emily offered him 3 standardized expansion packages that didn't match his specific needs. When Frank called me at Colossus, I already knew his expansion history, his seasonal patterns, and his budget constraints. Within 2 days, we had developed a customized solution that saved him 15% compared to Titan's generic offerings. This is why I work with you, Martin, Frank said during our contract signing. You understand my business, not just your company's products. The pattern repeated itself across multiple accounts. Titan's new systematic approach was creating service gaps that Colossus could easily fill with personalized attention and industry expertise. By month 2, Cassandra called me directly. "Martin, several of our clients are asking about you. This is creating disruption in our account management. I'm sure Dylan and Emily will establish their own relationships given time. Some clients are threatening to review their supplier relationships. This seems vindictive." Vindictive? Cassandra still didn't understand what was happening. "Cassandra, business relationships are personal. You decided that personal relationships were inefficient. Now you're discovering the cost of that decision." The third quarter results made Titan's situation undeniable. Revenue was down 18% compared to the previous year, with most losses concentrated in accounts that had been managed by me. Cassandra tried to explain the decline as temporary market disruption, but the board was asking pointed questions about client retention strategies. Meanwhile, Colossus was experiencing unprecedented growth in the Midwest market. Victor called me into his office to review our progress. "Martin, this expansion exceeded our most optimistic projections. We've gained more market share in 3 months than we managed in the previous 3 years." The numbers were impressive. We had converted 8 major accounts from Titan, signed 12 new clients who had previously been unreachable, and established partnerships with suppliers who wanted to work with someone who understood relationship-based selling. "What's your assessment of Titan's current position?" Victor asked. "They're in serious trouble. Dylan and Emily are overwhelmed. Cassandra is making strategic errors, and their remaining clients are questioning the service changes. I estimate they'll lose another 20% of their market share within 6 months." Victor smiled. "And where will that market share go?" "To companies that understand the value of personal relationships and industry expertise." That afternoon, I received a call from Emily Zhao. Her voice was stressed and defeated. "Mr. Kane, I know this is awkward, but could we meet for coffee? I need some advice." We met the next day at a cafe near Titan's offices. Emily looked exhausted. "I'm drowning," she admitted. "These client relationships are nothing like they taught us in business school. Jorge Alvarez hung up on Dylan yesterday. Diane Mercer refused to take my calls. Frank Costello demanded to speak with someone who understands industrial operations. Relationships take time to build, Emily. But we don't have time. Cassandra is blaming Dylan and me for the account losses. She says we're not implementing her systematic approaches correctly." Emily's frustration represented a larger problem at Titan. Cassandra's systematic approach was failing because it ignored the human element of business relationships. Dylan and Emily were capable professionals, but they were being set up to fail by a strategy that treated clients like data points instead of people. "Emily, what do you want from this conversation?" "Honestly, I want to know if Colossus is hiring." Her request wasn't surprising. Emily had quickly realized that Cassandra's approach was flawed, and she was looking for an escape route before the situation got worse. "Emily, I can't make hiring decisions, but I can tell you that Colossus values people who understand relationship-based selling. Would you be willing to give me a recommendation?" This was an interesting development. One of Cassandra's hand-picked replacements wanted to jump ship to our company. The irony was almost too perfect. "I'll consider it, but you need to understand something. If you join Colossus, you'll be competing directly against Titan and potentially against Dylan." "Dylan is planning to leave too," she said quietly. "He's talking to headhunters about positions in consulting. This situation is damaging both of our careers." 2 weeks later, Emily gave Titan her 2 weeks' notice. Dylan followed 3 days after that. Both cited strategic differences with management direction in their resignation letters. Cassandra had managed to lose not only her most experienced sales director, but also his supposedly superior replacements. She was left with a decimated sales team and a client base that was actively questioning their supplier relationships. The trade publications had a field day with the story. The fourth quarter brought the full scope of Titan's collapse into focus. Their revenue was down 35% year-over-year, with client retention rates at historic lows. Cassandra's quarterly presentation to the board was reportedly brutal, with directors questioning every aspect of her strategic vision. Meanwhile, Colossus opened a new regional office in Chicago to handle our expanded client base. Victor asked me to lead the new operation as regional vice president, with a team of experienced sales professionals who understood relationship-based selling. The Chicago office opening became an industry event. Clients, suppliers, and competitors all attended, creating networking opportunities that solidified our market position. Jorge Alvarez gave an impromptu speech during the reception. Martin Kane represents everything that's right about industrial sales: expertise, reliability, and personal commitment. That's why Steel Core is proud to partner with Colossus Supply. Diane Mercer from Lakefront Energy was equally supportive. In an industry obsessed with efficiency, Martin understands that effectiveness comes from knowing your clients and solving their problems. The validation from converted clients sent a clear message to the industry. Experience and relationships still mattered more than spreadsheets and systematic processes. Cassandra wasn't invited to the opening, but several attendees mentioned that Titan was struggling to find qualified replacements for their depleted sales team. Apparently, experienced industrial sales professionals weren't interested in working for a company that had publicly dismissed the value of relationship building. The next Monday, I received a call from Titan's board chairman, requesting a private meeting to discuss potential consulting opportunities. The meeting with Titan's board chairman, William Harper, took place the following Wednesday at his downtown office. Harper was a seasoned businessman who understood the difference between cost-cutting and strategic investment. "Martin, I'll be direct. Titan is in serious trouble, and we're exploring all options to stabilize our market position." "What kind of options?" "We're considering replacing Cassandra Holt as VP of Sales and bringing in experienced leadership to rebuild our client relationships." The irony was perfect. 6 months after firing me for being too expensive, Titan's board wanted to discuss bringing me back to fix the problems caused by my replacement. "Mr. Harper, I appreciate the confidence, but I'm very happy at Colossus Supply. We're prepared to offer significant compensation to secure your return. Double your previous salary, equity participation, and complete authority over sales strategy." The offer was financially attractive, but strategically impossible. Returning to Titan would mean abandoning the clients who had followed me to Colossus and betraying Victor's trust in my leadership. "Mr. Harper, the clients who left Titan didn't leave because of money or benefits. They left because they lost confidence in the company's commitment to relationship-based service. That confidence can't be restored with personnel changes alone." What would it take to restore that confidence? A complete reversal of Cassandra's strategic direction. A public acknowledgement that systematic processes cannot replace personal relationships in industrial sales. And probably several years of consistent performance to rebuild trust. Harper looked frustrated, but not surprised. "So you're saying the damage is irreversible?" "I'm saying that competitive advantages, once lost, are extremely difficult to recover." The meeting ended with Harper requesting my recommendation for potential sales directors who might be able to salvage Titan's position. I provided several names of experienced professionals, knowing that none of them would be able to fully restore what Cassandra had destroyed. The fifth quarter confirmed Titan's trajectory toward irrelevance. Revenue was down 42% from peak levels, and they had lost their position as the dominant industrial supplier in the Midwest. Cassandra was demoted to regional manager, with her strategic vision officially abandoned by corporate leadership. The business press covered Titan's decline extensively, often using Cassandra's name as shorthand for management short-sightedness. Harvard Business Review published a case study titled "The Holt Method: How Cost-Cutting Can Destroy Competitive Advantage." Cassandra's professional reputation was permanently damaged. Industry insiders knew her as the executive who had dismantled a successful sales operation in pursuit of theoretical efficiency gains. She became unemployable in any senior strategic role. Meanwhile, Colossus continued expanding its market share. We opened a second regional office in Milwaukee and hired 12 additional sales professionals, many of whom were experienced veterans from competitors who recognized our commitment to relationship-based selling. The annual Midwest Industrial Supply Conference in November became a celebration of our market transformation. Colossus had the largest booth, the most client meetings, and the highest profile in industry publications. I walked past Titan's modest display on the conference floor. They had downsized to a corner booth with basic promotional materials and 2 junior sales representatives who looked uncomfortable fielding questions about their company's recent performance. The contrast was stark. 18 months earlier, Titan had dominated this conference with premium booth space, client entertainment events, and industry presentations. Now they were struggling for relevance in a market they had once controlled. Victor found me near Titan's booth. "Quite a transformation," he said quietly. "Business is about relationships," I replied. Cassandra forgot that fundamental truth. The confrontation I had been expecting finally happened during the conference networking reception. Cassandra approached me near the bar, her expression a mixture of anger and desperation. "Martin, we need to talk." We found a quiet corner away from the main crowd. Cassandra looked older, more tired than she had during our meetings at Titan. "You systematically destroyed our client base," she said accusingly. "I served clients who chose to work with Colossus Supply. That's called competition. This was personal revenge. You used insider knowledge to steal our accounts." Cassandra still didn't understand what had really happened. "I used 18 years of industry experience to build relationships with clients who value expertise over efficiency. You chose to eliminate that expertise from Titan. I chose to take it elsewhere. The board is demanding explanations for our market share losses." "What did you tell them?" "That we're experiencing temporary disruption due to competitive pressures." I looked at Cassandra and saw someone finally grasping the full scope of her strategic error. She hadn't just fired an expensive employee. She had armed her biggest competitor with detailed knowledge of Titan's vulnerabilities, client relationships, and operational blind spots. "Cassandra, you told me that 2 interns could replace me. How did that work out?" She didn't answer, but her expression said everything. Dylan and Emily had quit within 4 months. The accounts they were supposed to manage had been converted by competitors. The systematic processes she had championed had failed spectacularly. "You ruined my career," she said finally. "You ruined your own career." I just picked up the pieces. 6 months after the conference confrontation, Titan Industrial Supplies was sold to a private equity firm that immediately began liquidating assets and terminating operations. 18 years of market building was officially over. The acquisition announcement included a brief mention that Cassandra Holt had been terminated as part of the ownership transition. Her severance package was reportedly minimal, reflecting the board's assessment of her contribution to the company's decline. Several former Titan employees reached out to me about opportunities at Colossus. We hired 6 experienced professionals who understood relationship-based selling and were eager to work for a company that valued expertise over theoretical efficiency. Victor called me into his office to discuss our next phase of growth. "Martin, I want you to consider an executive vice president role overseeing all Midwest operations. Your success here has exceeded everyone's expectations." The promotion was well-deserved recognition for what we had accomplished. In less than 2 years, we had transformed Colossus from a regional competitor into the dominant industrial supplier in the Midwest. What would the role involve? Complete strategic authority over market expansion, client development, and competitive positioning. Essentially, you'd be running the kind of operation that Titan should have maintained. I accepted the promotion, understanding that it represented the final chapter in my professional redemption. Cassandra had fired me for being too expensive and too focused on personal relationships. Now I was running a larger operation than she had ever managed, using the same relationship-based approach she had dismissed as obsolete. The trade publications announced my promotion with headlines like "Colossus Elevates Former Titan Director" and "Relationship Building Pays Off for Industry Veterans." The implicit message was clear: experience and expertise had triumphed over cost-cutting and systematic processes. A year later, I stood in the lobby of Colossus Supply's new corporate headquarters in downtown Chicago. The building was twice the size of Titan's old facility, with modern offices, advanced technology, and space for continued expansion. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was attended by clients who had followed me from Titan, industry partners who recognized our market leadership, and competitors who now viewed Colossus as the benchmark for relationship-based selling. Jorge Alvarez from Steel Core spoke during the ceremony. "Martin Kane represents the best of industrial sales, someone who understands that business is ultimately about people, not processes." Diane Mercer from Lakefront Energy added, "In an industry that's becoming increasingly impersonal, Martin and Colossus prove that relationships still matter more than spreadsheets." The validation from clients who had trusted me through the transition from Titan to Colossus was professionally satisfying, but the broader industry recognition was even more meaningful. During the reception, Victor pulled me aside for a private conversation. Martin, what you've accomplished here will be studied in business schools for years. You took a career-ending situation and turned it into market dominance. It wasn't about revenge, I replied. It was about proving that relationship-based selling still works when it's supported by strategic thinking and operational excellence. What's next for you? I looked around the lobby filled with clients, colleagues, and industry leaders who understood the value of experience and expertise. What's next is continuing to build the kind of company that values people over processes, relationships over efficiency metrics, and long-term partnerships over quarterly cost savings. 2 years after joining Colossus, the transformation was complete. We had captured 60% of Titan's former market share, established partnerships with suppliers throughout the Midwest, and built a reputation as the industry leader in relationship-based selling. The annual industry rankings confirmed our market position. Colossus Supply was now the dominant industrial supplier in Illinois, Wisconsin, and Indiana. Our client retention rate exceeded 95%. Our revenue growth was the highest in the sector, and our employee satisfaction scores reflected a company culture that valued expertise and experience. I received a call from a Harvard Business School professor who was updating the case study about Titan's collapse. Mr. Kane, we're interested in your perspective on relationship-based selling versus systematic process management. Both have their place, I replied diplomatically. But in industries where trust and reliability are competitive advantages, personal relationships usually trump theoretical efficiency. What lessons should future executives take from the Titan situation? That institutional knowledge is a strategic asset, not a cost center. That experienced employees represent competitive intelligence, not just salary expenses. And that firing your most knowledgeable people can literally hand that knowledge to your competitors. The professor was particularly interested in the timeline of Titan's decline. How quickly did you anticipate that Cassandra Holt's strategy would fail? I knew it would fail within the first quarter. What surprised me was how completely it failed and how quickly competitors could capitalize on their strategic errors. The case study was published 6 months later under the title, The Titan Collapse: How Cost-Cutting Destroyed Competitive Advantage. It became required reading in strategic management programs across the country. Cassandra's name was prominently featured as an example of how theoretical business knowledge without industry experience could lead to catastrophic decision-making. The final encounter with Cassandra happened at an industry networking event in downtown Chicago. She was there representing a small consulting firm that specialized in organizational efficiency optimization, essentially selling the same systematic approach that had destroyed Titan. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me across the room, clearly wanting to avoid conversation. But professional courtesy required acknowledgement, so she approached during a break between presentations. Martin, I heard about your promotion to Executive Vice President. Congratulations. Thank you, Cassandra. How are things in the consulting world? Challenging. Clients are increasingly skeptical of efficiency-focused approaches. She paused, then added, I've been thinking about our conversation at the conference last year. What about it? You said I ruined my own career. I've had time to reflect on that assessment. This was as close to an apology as I was likely to get from someone who had publicly dismissed 18 years of experience as obsolete. Cassandra, we both made strategic decisions. You chose to prioritize cost-cutting over relationship building. I chose to take my expertise to a company that valued it more highly. Do you think there's any way Titan could have survived with a different approach? Titan could have thrived if they had recognized that competitive advantage comes from strategic assets like institutional knowledge and client relationships, not from cost reduction and process standardization. The third anniversary of joining Colossus marked a milestone that I hadn't anticipated when Cassandra first delivered her insulting ultimatum. We had not only captured Titan's former market share, but had expanded into new territories and industry sectors that had previously been unreachable. Victor announced during our quarterly meeting that Colossus Supply was being acquired by a larger industrial conglomerate that wanted to expand our relationship-based selling model to national markets. Martin, they specifically requested that you lead the national expansion as Senior Vice President of Strategic Development. It's a significant opportunity. The acquisition offer validated everything we had accomplished. A major corporation recognized that our approach to relationship-based selling was scalable and strategically valuable, exactly the opposite of Cassandra's assessment 3 years earlier. I accepted the national role, understanding that it represented the ultimate vindication of relationship-focused business strategy. The same expertise that Cassandra had dismissed as obsolete was now being used as the foundation for national market expansion. The press announcement included quotes from several clients who had followed me from Titan to Colossus. Martin Kane proves that experience and relationships still matter in modern business, and personal trust beats systematic processes every time. Industry analysts described the acquisition as a strategic recognition that relationship-based selling remains the gold standard in industrial supply chains. The implicit criticism of Titan's failed efficiency approach was obvious to everyone in the industry. The national expansion exceeded all projections. Within 18 months, we had established operations in 12 states, converted major clients from competitors who relied on systematic approaches, and built a reputation as the premier relationship-focused industrial supplier in the country. I received recognition as Industrial Sales Executive of the Year from the National Supply Chain Association, with the award citation specifically mentioning strategic vision that prioritizes long-term client relationships over short-term cost optimization. The award ceremony was attended by industry leaders, client executives, and business school professors who had studied the Titan case. During my acceptance speech, I addressed the broader implications of relationship-based selling. 3 years ago, I was told that 2 interns could replace 18 years of industry experience. Today, that experience has become the foundation for a national expansion that has created jobs, strengthened client relationships, and proven that expertise remains our most valuable competitive advantage. The audience included several executives who had made similar cost-cutting decisions at their own companies. The message was clear. Experienced employees represent strategic assets, not just expense line items. After the ceremony, Jorge Alvarez from Steel Corp approached me with a smile. "Martin, I've been telling this story to every business leader I meet. You prove that loyalty and expertise create value that no spreadsheet can measure." Diane Mercer from Lakefront Energy added, "What happened at Titan should be required study for every MBA program. Sometimes the most expensive employee is actually the most valuable investment." Their validation represented something more important than professional recognition. Confirmation that relationship-based business practices still worked in an increasingly impersonal economy. 5 years after Cassandra Holt told me that 2 interns could replace me, I stood on the observation deck of our new national headquarters in Chicago, looking out over a city where Colossus Supply had become synonymous with relationship-based excellence. The view included the empty building that had once housed Titan Industrial Supplies, now converted to generic office space after the company's complete liquidation. The contrast was a daily reminder of how quickly strategic errors can reshape entire market dynamics. My assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Kane, there's someone here to see you." Cassandra Holt from Strategic Efficiency Consulting. I was surprised but not entirely shocked. Cassandra's consulting firm had struggled to find clients willing to implement systematic efficiency approaches after the Titan collapse became an industry cautionary tale. She entered my office looking professionally defeated but maintaining the dignity that had defined her management style, even when that style had proven catastrophically wrong. "Martin, I wanted to congratulate you personally on the national expansion. What you've accomplished is remarkable." "Thank you, Cassandra. How can I help you today?" "I'm here to offer an apology and to ask if there might be opportunities at Colossus for someone who has learned from strategic mistakes." The request was unexpected but not entirely unwelcome. Cassandra had demonstrated intelligence and leadership ability. Her error had been in misunderstanding the strategic value of relationships and experience. "What kind of opportunity are you considering?" "Anything that would allow me to contribute to relationship-based business development. I've spent 3 years studying why my approach at Titan failed, and I understand now that efficiency without effectiveness is just organized failure." I considered her request carefully. Hiring Cassandra would be the ultimate demonstration that Colossus valued redemption and learning over revenge and vindictiveness. "Cassandra, we have an opening for the Director of Strategic Analysis, reporting to me." The role would involve studying client relationships and competitive dynamics to identify expansion opportunities. Are you interested? Her acceptance was immediate and grateful. Martin, I would be honored to work with you and learn from the approach that I should have understood years ago. 6 months later, Cassandra had become one of our most effective strategic analysts, using her systematic thinking skills to support rather than replace relationship-based selling. Her transformation from antagonist to collaborator completed the most unexpected chapter of my professional story. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's succeeding so thoroughly that they want to learn from your methods. Cassandra's willingness to acknowledge her errors and adapt to relationship-based strategy proved that even theoretical business leaders could evolve when confronted with undeniable market results. The final irony was perfect. The woman who had fired me for being too expensive had become my employee, working to build the kind of relationship-focused organization she had once tried to dismantle. Business has taught us both that personal growth, like competitive advantage, comes from understanding people rather than just managing processes. Added immediately, understanding what I needed. If Cassandra wanted everything documented, she would get everything. Every client preference, every competitor weakness, every market insight I had gathered over 18 years of grinding through deals that built this company's reputation. What Cassandra didn't understand was that she wasn't just firing her most experienced sales director. She was about to hand Colossus Supply, our biggest competitor, the keys to her kingdom.